Okay, so one of the items here that this Lab 4 is really about is getting you to start thinking about how you can lay out multiple chunks of data in an environment like ArcMap. Some of these skills are actually applicable to other chunks of software, so keep that in mind. And kind of one of the things that you might be asked to do in your profession in the future would be to, for instance, put together a brochure or a handout or something like that. So some of these skills will actually convert over to that pretty well. But this is a cartography course, so you're also going to be needing to kind of meet some of the general objectives there as well. So here I have the data, and I've messed a little bit, the data for Lab 4, and I've messed around a little bit with display. Your map doesn't have to look like this at all. This is just, kind of my quick and dirty. I want to display this quickly for the example. And one of the first things you're going to have to do is actually go here to the page and print setup. And remember, I said that you have to set this up so that your layout is 11 inches by 17 inches. And so there are a couple ways you can do that. One is you can come here to size and select 11 by 17, or you can uncheck use printer paper settings and you can set the width manually. Remember, you can do either landscape, which is a horizontal layout, or portrait, which is a vertical layout. It's your choice. For this example, we'll work with a portrait layout because maybe we can have the map items flow from top to bottom. So say OK, and you'll notice nothing happened here. Well, that's because we're in the data view. If we switch over to the layout view, we have the map layout here, but then we have a bunch of empty space. Now remember, the goal of this lab is to kind of show the map user how crime actually in Farrington's Grove stacks up with the rest of the United States. And so what we want to do is show kind of a local map and then maybe show it in context with Indiana and then the rest of the U.S. So what we might be looking for here, and it'll depend on how you've sketched this out in the sketch you sent me, is actually multiple data frames where, up here we might have Farrington's Grove, and then maybe to the right of it we've got crime trends for Indiana in general, and then down below, making up a big chunk of the map because it's more complicated, we see national trends for crime on a county basis as well. So to set that up, we've got basically here we have all of our data in one data frame. What we're really interested in is 3 different data frames. Now, data frames, remember, it's like a container for map data. You have other elements that you can put on here, like text boxes and north arrows and scale bars, and you can even insert photos and things like that, which you can learn about in another how-to. But anyway, what we want to do is insert some data frames, which you can do by going here to Insert and Data Frame, and we'll add 2. And you'll notice every time we do that, we have a new data frame, just a new box labeled New Data Frame showing up. And what you can do here as well is actually name them. So maybe we call this like National View. We call this one Farrington's Grove, and we call this one, double-clicked it. We call this one State of Indiana. And so now we can kind of lay this out just by clicking and dragging and moving things around. And since I know Farrington's Grove is kind of a north-south oriented geographic area, maybe I want it to be relatively skinny and long. And it turns out that the state of Indiana is similar as well. So I kind of arrange those. Now, I want a disclaimer here. Just because I'm laying out my map this way doesn't mean that you should. In fact, it'd be better if you picked a different way so there's a little bit more variety in the class. But, for my purposes here, and remember too, you're going to be required to add some charts and graphs of crime, at least for Farrington's Grove, because that's where the most detailed data is. So I'm not actually leaving space for those sorts of layout items here, so also keep that in mind. So anyway, I have these 3 data frames, but the only one with data in it is the national view. And really what I want to do is make sure that Farrington's Grove crime is in the Farrington's Grove frame. So right now you can't see it, but it's displayed here. I want to move that there. And then maybe I want the counties and crime population data and the highways data up, and the lakes data probably, up in state of Indiana as well. So, or move that there. So what I'm looking at is the same layer displayed multiple times, right? Once in here, once in there, maybe once here. And you can do that pretty easily by using our good friend copy and paste. So you can just select it by making it, click on it to make it blue, copy, and then this is counties for all of the U.S. I want to paste that here. I can go paste layers, and suddenly I have a national map of crime going on up in this layer. Maybe I also want to, move this North America highways map. So I'm going to actually, I think I can click and drag it down to here, right? And because at the national view, highways is kind of distracting, but perhaps at the Indiana level, it will be less so. And then I also want lakes down here in Indiana, so I can copy and then come here and paste layer. So if it'll actually paste layer. Nope. Copy. Paste layer. There we go. So, here's our quote-unquote map of Indiana. Here's our map of the U.S. And now we need the Farrington's Grove information. So maybe we'll move that from national view down to Farrington's Grove. And maybe we want Vigo County roads there too. Now, and I'll turn those on. You can kind of see major road. There we go. And we talked in class a little bit about why these don't line up. Why the roads don't line up with the block groups defined by the census, and that's because census blocks and city blocks are slightly different. But anyway, so here's our map of Farrington's Grove. Here's our map of what will be a map of Indiana, and here's our map of North America. Here, for our map of Indiana, maybe we want to zoom in. Now, you're going to run into a problem. I've clicked the zoom button here, and if I come here, notice it'll only let me zoom within this data layout. Well, that's not what I want. So we've got to do this activation thing where you click on the data frame and you right click and you activate. Now I can zoom in on the Indiana map. And here you might want to be a little tricky. So for instance, we want the state of Indiana boundary here as well. So maybe what we do, oops, I double clicked it. Maybe what we do is actually duplicate this. So we can copy it and then come here to the data frame and paste layer, and it'll duplicate it. Now I've got this twice, and you ask, why would I want to do that? Well, it's because I want to map this as categories and then just map it with state name, right? And then I want to maybe add values and only map Indiana and leave everything else out of here. We've done this a couple times in lab. In this case, I'm just kind of blasting through it just to kind of emphasize how that works. Maybe we need to up the line size a little bit. And there's Indiana counties. Again, you want to be careful that the lines aren't too thick, or else they'll start kind of zooming in on or subsuming some of the other information on the map that's important. But anyway, we do a little bit of arrangement. Maybe the highways are a little bit understated. We kind of add those on there, and we get a good idea for how things are in the state of Indiana overall. Look, it looks like in terms of crime reports per person, there are a couple counties with higher crime, but really overall Indiana is a pretty low crime place, at least according to this scale. And that would be crime reports in the year 2002 and overpopulation in the year 2000. The numbers don't quite line up, but for illustrating trends, we're happy enough with that. Maybe we want to emphasize Vigo County. We can actually do that by, again, copy and maybe we paste this layer again, and instead of setting it up so that it's instead of setting it up so that it's just the state of Indiana, we want to get Vigo County. We're going to need to do find Vigo County's FIPS code, which is 167, or we can find name, Vigo, and we come in here and we hit categories, name, we want to add only Vigo. You might want to hit complete list, and it might take a minute. And we find Vigo in the list here, hit OK, and maybe we want to make this, have a really thick line, or it might have a fill. We want it to have a line fill, and maybe we'll set the angle at 45 degrees. Something like this, just to emphasize, like, hey, Vigo County is located here. Something like that. And you might even connect it somehow. But anyway, so there you go. In terms of moving between data frames or within data frames, you got to be careful, because I might want to come zoom down here, and the software at some points may not let me, so it can get frustrating. Another couple of quick tips here. Notice that the scale for Indiana is pretty boring. We're not really seeing much. We got a couple counties with with higher crime, and on a national level, it doesn't. These are pretty much the same scale. You might want to have different scales here, but remember that's going to require different legends. Also, let's say, for instance, you want to make the white areas here blue because they're actually water. You can come here to the national view, and if you double click on the data frame title and you go to frame, we can set the background to a nice watery blue color. You'll want to make this blue, though, match the same color as this blue. So anyway, that's kind of how you mess with data frames. Remember that when you put one data frame on top of another data frame, you get into a situation where the order of things is important, so be careful. You can also remove notice all of these data frames have borders. You can remove those by going to the same place that we set the watercolor at and just setting it to none. And that might be a good option if you've got things and you want to overlap them or get a little bit more modern in your map design instead of modular like I have laid out. But anyway, have fun.